Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Uma Subramanian, and she's the founder of the Limitless Leaders, where she's redefining how leadership is developed for the modern world of work. From scaling a global developer community to 37,000 members in just 5 months and leading developer success, she's seen firsthand how technical talent can thrive or stall based on how well they communicate their value. So, in this episode, we will explore why even top technical professionals struggle to connect with non-technical audiences and how mastering communication, visibility, and influence can transform careers. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Uma.
Thank you so much, Neil. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with you today.
Wonderful. First question. So you spent years working closely with developers and technical teams. So what has made you notice the communication gap between technical and non-technical audiences?
Sure. As technical audience, we have a lot of expertise that's inbuilt in us. We have been trained, especially in the early career stages, to really showcase our technical brilliance. Probably even our role is to help others in the team ramp up on certain technologies or skills. So I think what happens is initially in the early stages, we are taught and trained to showcase our brilliance, and that is rewarded. That's what gives the results that the young professionals need, and so that becomes a habit. But as we rise in our career and rise in leadership, and as we grow, the goal of the communication is not just to showcase or just to help others ramp up on our on tech, but really having the ability to translate that technical brilliance into a language that everyone, maybe you're working cross group with marketing and you're working cross group with other divisions, and not everyone has that technical background. And so what is required at higher levels is not just transferring of that knowledge, but translating it into the language that others can also understand. And I think that's where the gap starts forming, because we've been trained in a certain way that jargon is okay, that or that what we think we know and what is obvious to us is obvious to others. And so there's just a shift that's needed at that stage as we grow.
You're I'm smiling when you're talking, Uma, because you're basically describing me a number of years ago. I mean, when I first started working, this would have been my second job. I had to give presentations in front of management on a monthly basis, and I used all the jargon. I just assumed that what I knew they already understood because I understood it already. So what more is there to understand? But oftentimes I'd get questions afterwards I thought I'd answered during the presentation. So obviously I wasn't putting things in a way that these people could understand, and I was making way too many assumptions as to what they knew already. And looking back on it now, it's I'm a bit embarrassed by the fact that I thought that way at the time, because even looking at it now, I didn't always know what I knew then. We went to school to get these technical degrees. We take on these technical roles, and that's how we ended up having this technical expertise. But the people we're speaking to, especially if they're non-technical, they didn't do any of that. So why would we even assume that they would know what we know? Because we didn't always know what we know. We had to do quite a bit of work to know what we know. And not yet here I am giving these presentations and getting frustrated because these people don't know what it took me years to learn.
Exactly. And I see that still in my work, even today, when I work with tech leaders, tech professionals, I still see people coming up with, heavily jargonated presentations. And even if I challenge them. They're like, oh, everyone knows it. Like, these are things that they have to know. And there is a lot of, um, justification to have the jargon there because we are just so trained. It's not anyone's fault. I think we do that because we have been, kind of trained and rewarded, to be like that for many, many years. And so I feel like when we are suddenly put in front of more and more non-technical audience, it's difficult for us to adapt and shift and really understand where the gap is.
Yeah, I think a lot of us we really focus and we pride ourselves in being precise in our language. So we figure we have to
Exactly.
use these particular words because those are the words that are required to convey the information we want to convey. But if the people you're speaking to don't understand the words, then what's the point? So essentially, you're speaking to an audience that can't really act on what you're wanting them to act on because they don't understand what you're saying. So you're wasting their time. You've wasted your time. It's just a waste. And again, when I first started giving presentations, I wasn't thinking about that at all. I mean, I had to give these presentations as part of my job, but I used to get up there and read slides and read all the jargon and just assume that the information spoke for itself. And then I try to get out of there as quickly as possible. But I never got out of there as quickly as possible because I get all these questions afterwards. And I just thought, and you would have thought I would have learned my lesson after that first presentation, but it actually took my project being canceled for me to think, this whole speaking in front of people thing, maybe this is something I need to improve at.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing that even in one presentation, you had that awareness and realization. That's really great.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm curious to get your take on this as well. So how does the communication gap impact career growth, visibility, and opportunities for technical professionals?
I think that's the number one reason that I'm seeing, Neil, is communication. So as I see tech professionals rising in in their levels of maturity and career growth, if the communication also does not evolve alongside that, then I see at some point the communication skills becomes a bottleneck and hinders and blocks the growth. Definitely, this is the top reason that I see. And one of the reasons is because at every stage as you grow, your audience changes, the expectations from the communication changes. Early on, the goal of communication might be just information transfer. But as we rise up, it is influence, it's getting alignment, it's working cross group and getting buy-ins, executive, buy-ins from executives and so on and so forth. So as we grow, since our audience changes, the expectation changes. If the communication does not evolve with that, then we kind of get stuck. At some point, we realize, I need to improve my communication, and I think people try to work on that. And if they make that shift, then they're able to grow. If not, I see people getting stuck in that due to communication.
Yes, especially if you're someone who wants to move into managing people, then it really becomes important because it's not just about your individual work anymore. Now
Mhm.
you have to be responsible for others' work as well. And then communicating what those people are doing to other people within the organization, that's likely your job too. So, I mean, it's just not about you anymore. It's about you conveying information in a way that others understand so that they can do their jobs better. And I think a lot of us
Totally.
we don't think about, at least I know I can speak for myself. I didn't think about that at all. As I mentioned earlier, it was just about conveying information in a way that if I understood it, then the other people should understand it too, and trying to get out of rooms as quickly as possible after conveying that information. But it's not a winning way to move forward and try to move up within an organization. That's for sure. And I learned that lesson. Yeah.
Exactly. And one instance that comes to mind is when I took my first manager role at Microsoft. I was there for 20 years. In 2010, I took up my first manager role. again, moving from a super high performer to a manager role, totally different skill set. And again, communication, your influencing skills, these are the ones that come in as a huge bottleneck if you don't work on them and adapt and evolve. I struggled. I struggled when I became a first-time manager, especially with communicating and influencing certain individuals on my team and even my peers. And came to the same conclusion. I need to work on improving my communication skills, influencing skills, and it's been a journey. But I think it's totally well worth it. I think if there is one skill that um, everyone's told, hey, really go and invest in the skill and just continue to refine it for your entire life. I think that would be communication skills, and I wish everyone was told that pretty early.
Absolutely. I mean, we touched on this earlier, Uma, but I think a lot of technical people they worry about oversimplifying their work. So I'm curious, what would you suggest a technical person do to convey what they need to convey to a non-technical audience without sacrificing the accuracy of what they want to say?
Great question. That always comes up, and then we are afraid that, oh, maybe we are dumbing it down too much, or we are losing the essence of it, or we assume that, oh, there's just no other way to present this information in a simpler manner. But there are ways, right? We can learn to communicate the same complex technical information using metaphors or maybe an example or maybe a story. So just, these are skills that can be learned. And if we just, invest a little bit of time before preparing for a meeting and think about, what is something, if I were to explain the same thing to a 12-year-old, how would I explain that? Is there a real life metaphor or a story that I can correlate this with? Or is there a story or a real life experience that I can, share to make this easier? Or even doing powerful demonstrations and demos to make the concept a little bit easier and simpler. So just thinking of other creative ways to make sure that we are breaking down that complex jargon and the concept into something that is digestible, something that is comprehensible by the audience. That would be what I would say is working and would work for people. It's just a little bit of time taken to think on those lines.
Yeah, I really like your idea of using metaphors, examples, and stories. I know when I first started giving presentations, I didn't even think that telling stories would be appropriate, especially if giving a technical presentation. But if you're speaking to a non-technical audience, it can make all the difference between them paying attention and not, because if you just data dump on people, they'll tune out real
Exactly.
quickly. And then again, you basically wasted everyone's time and if the goal of the presentation was to convey information so that better decisions can be made, well, you failed on that too. So it just seems like it's definitely something that I think a lot more of us need to take into account, especially early on, so we don't get surprised, years into a working that communicating with others is something that we need to be concerned with. Because as I said, I think you're right when you said early on, it's not something that a lot of us think about at all. And I know I didn't.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I didn't either. I came up, I mean, I realized after I took up that manager role and struggled a little bit with it, that's when I realized. But yes, I do think if this was one advice given to everyone pretty young in age, early in career, that would make a huge difference.
Yeah. What advice would you have for a technical person who has to speak to an audience that's mixed? So there's technical people in the audience, there's more business-minded people in the audience. What advice would you have for that person?
So definitely, speak to the technical people, like, make it at that level. And so design your presentation so everyone that is in the room can understand and comprehend. So remembering that clarity is always, beats complexity. So I would focus on, being really clear to the audience, putting the audience, being the audience shoes, and making it relevant and understandable to them. And for the, if there are senior, like, more advanced technical audience in the room as well, then during the presentation, after explaining the basic concepts and making sure that whatever is needed from the non-technical audience, we are making progress on that. The presenter can ask the more advanced audience for their input if they wanted to add anything, or if they have any questions, and kind of address that. But I would, this happens all the time, right? We are in a meeting, it's never one audience or one type of audience. We always have mixed audiences. But what I have seen, work for me definitely is to make sure that everyone gets that base understanding. So, focusing on that first, and then giving the stage to the more technical audience and answering specific, questions, or giving them a chance to ask questions as part of the presentation, maybe once the baseline is set.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. When I mentioned I had to give these presentations in front of management, and the main reason I had to do it is because the company that I worked for was rather small. There weren't project managers at the company at the time. I think they have them now, but at least when I worked there, there weren't any. So it fell on the product development engineers' plate to give these presentations in front of management on project status. So what would you say to a technical person who says that when it comes to communicating big picture, I guess big picture ideas to management or to non-technical people, that should be someone else's job, like a project manager's?
So if your organization requires that, my advice would be to, step into that. If there are, especially, no project managers or, product managers that would make those types of, status updates, it's a great opportunity to step into that and, get an opportunity to present. And I would use, there are frameworks available for different kinds of communication. I highly recommend using popular frameworks and structures to structure your presentation and your um, status updates, whatever is that you're trying to communicate. So one of the frameworks that I recommend for status updates is Okta. It's you can search up OCTA. You provide the objective, you provide the context, you provide information on the timelines, and then the end with actions. It's a great framework for providing status updates. So one of the things that I would say is, when these opportunities come up, seize them and use them to elevate your communication skills. And what happens is, when we are able to get that opportunity to present to senior leadership and present all that, it's also elevating your impact within the organization. We have to understand that doing the work is not enough anymore. We have to make sure that our value is understood. Senior leaders, we are earning trust with them, we're building trust with them, because they are in rooms making decisions that we are not in. So it's really important that we seize these opportunities. I have seen many times people shooing away these types of opportunities because they feel like, oh, I'm like, really focused on my work. I'm working on like a whole bunch of things and I don't have the time for this. And they kind of don't like or enjoy doing those things. But that's the shift I think we need to help people make, is realize doing excellent work is no longer enough. We need to be able to communicate, make our value understood if we want to grow and get the right opportunities and the right roles that utilize our full potential. So I would say it's totally worth it. Build the skills if you need to, get help and build the skills, but go and seize them. If you're getting those opportunities, that's actually a great sign.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. In fact, when you were speaking, Uma, it reminded me of a conference that I attended a couple of summers ago. It was a technical conference, so it was mainly engineers in the audience. One of the sessions that I attended was given by a business development person from a company. And after the presentation, he was asked a bunch of questions he couldn't answer because they were all technical. But luckily, there were two engineers from his company in the audience, and they answered all the questions. He basically just stood there and the two engineers answered the questions from their seats. It made me wonder, why didn't one of them give the presentation or at least co-present with the business development person? But yet here they are seated next to me answering these questions. But if they saw themselves as those people in front, as opposed to maybe thinking, well, this is the business development person's job. I don't have to be the person in front of the company. Well, now, I mean, perhaps the company isn't seen in as great a light because we're not getting the what if they weren't there? Then
Yeah.
this poor business development person was just going to stand there with his face red, not being able to answer all these questions, and maybe people don't think as well about the company. But I mean, luckily they were there. But I mean, they could have been somewhere else.
I have seen this play out throughout my career, like 20 years at Microsoft and the startup. 100% agree with that. I think there is a lot of opportunity for, especially with AI and everything that's happening right now. Relevance is really, really becoming critical. Like, everyone's trying to stay relevant, everyone's trying to, um, thrive in this, disruptive kind of economy that we are in right now with AI and the layoffs and everything that's happening. So I really think, finding opportunities like this to go and present, to go and present in front of senior leadership or present in front of community, present at public spaces. These are great ways to elevate your value and make yourself kind of indispensable in this market. And that is one of the things that I really, really believe in. And that's why I help my clients build visibility in many different ways within the company as well as online. And we are seeing great results when, right, it boosts confidence. They learn to communicate better. They learn to really understand and articulate their value better. So there's just a lot of benefits in doing that work in yourself and improving and elevating your communication skills for sure.
What do you think an organization can do to help their technical staff become better at communicating, especially with non-technical people?
There are usually trainings and um, trainings available. There are opportunities available. Like, at least, I mean, I've worked at Microsoft for many years. There are several, technical groups and opportunities to speak, and I know many brilliant software engineers that have taken those opportunities, and they go and speak small population. But I have seen that. I have seen some engineers taking full advantage of that. They go and speak, and they're in front of audiences, even within the company as well. Presenting to executive audiences and all that. So, but I think those opportunities are there. Those trainings are there. We just have to, or I mean, even if your company doesn't offer that, I'm sure there are opportunities and training available outside. I think it's I would say it's the individuals who need to take that proactive kind of step and try to work on that. And organizations, I mean, I can only speak for Microsoft or the organization I've worked at, and they have those trainings available. There are plenty of trainings available, and mentorship, mentoring is available. So just utilizing the options that are available
Yeah.
would be the way to go.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. And I think you're right when you say that ultimately the buck stops with the person. And you can offer as an organization all the trainings, but if the people don't value the trainings or don't value getting better at communicating, well, what's the point of they won't do the trainings, or if you force them to do the trainings, they won't take it seriously, and then you basically it was a waste of time for everyone involved. But hopefully you don't have to be like myself having a project canceled to understand that getting better at communicating with people is something that technical people should concern themselves with. I think you're right about that. I mean, it starts and stops with the person,
The
and
individual.
ab-
Exactly.
absolutely. This has been a great conversation, Uma. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
LinkedIn would be the best place. I'm usually active on LinkedIn every day.
Okay, LinkedIn it is. Oh, okay, everyone. Well, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Uma.
Thank you so much, Neil.